Is $1 million enough to win financially?
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Brian, I am super excited about this show, and here's why. This is going to be a show that's going to give us an opportunity to kind of smack some haters around, to smack some trolls around, because oftentimes on this show, we like to talk about motivational topics. We like to get our team, our tribe, super juiced up about saving for the future. And then in come the trolls, sending us emails, going out to the website, leaving comments on YouTube that are just throwing just negativity our way. And so we want to address that and hit that on today's show.
Well, look, I want to throw out an olive branch because I'm actually a troll tamer.
Tamer.
You call me a troll whisperer.
I'd love
and the
it,
fact
love
that
it.
I love to turn trolls, and I've actually been successful at this, when we have people come to the show, throw shade at us, but then I say, stick around a little bit longer, and before long, you'll be part of this movement with us. And here's what I'm talking about, is that Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, just yesterday was talking about how inflation is, Berkshire Hathaway is experiencing inflation
It's
with
here.
steel prices, with some of their manufacturing. And you guys are seeing, I mean, Whirlpool has announced they're going to raise the price of their washing machines and their appliances. So this is what the naysayers throw our way, is that it usually comes in several different forms. They say, look, I live in a high cost of living part of the country.
Sure.
So $1 million is nothing.
It's not, I live out on one of the coasts. I live in one of those places. $1 million just doesn't add up to much at all.
And then, of course, the inflation, which I've hinted at, is because, by the way, you guys are, I'm the troll whisperer. You guys are the troll slayers. Because somebody just the other day was talking about our 88 times over, and he was making fun of the fact that when he retired at 65, he'd be able to buy 2 cups of coffee. And one of you guys came off the top rope and just totally just slew through, elbow, arm, you totally took it across with a sickle, and told him, no, you're doing the math all wrong. So I want you guys to know, we deal with these naysayers all the time, and we're going to get into today's show why $1 million is still a very valuable part of your journey to financial independence.
Yeah, and what we want to equip you with is we don't want the naysayers to pull you off track. You, the person that is doing the things you're supposed to be doing, moving in the direction you're supposed to be moving, don't allow that noise to pull you off. And we thought, in good form, we would kind of show you an example of one of these naysayers. Went and pulled a comment that we're going to share.
This is a cautionary tale. By the way, when you post YouTube comments and other things, you are potentially becoming part of the show. So here's our first exhibit.
So this is what David said. David said, I wish all these financial shows would get away from the whole 80% of millionaires are first generation. It's true, but it's highly misleading. I was a millionaire before I was 40 because of my house. Most homeowners...
Nice humble brag.
I know, right? No big deal. Most homeowners in large cities can't help but become millionaires. $1 million is nothing these days.
All caps.
We're holding it up as the you're rich level of wealth, the same as we did in the 80s and 90s. $1 million worth of wealth is not financial freedom, especially if you live in a city. Talk to me about the percent of people that have 5 million or 10 million. That's the point when you can enjoy your money. At $1 million, you're still saving.
David, first, you need a hug. I feel like David needs a hug. But the second thing is, by the way, 5 million, 10 million, you're still saving. I just want, but actually, you're saving, and your army of dollar bills are doing even more. But David had some points in here that I want to address. First of all, I think this is one of the reasons we take a lot of flack for when we talk about our net worth statements. If your biggest appreciating asset is the house that you live in, your use asset that provides you shelter, that's a little concerning, because I don't look at that type of $1 million net worth the same as I do as liquid assets, meaning like your savings, your retirement assets, all the money that you're putting into investments. That's completely different than the equity in your house, because at the end of the day, you have to sleep somewhere. And now look, I know there's lots of folks that are moving from California, Chicago, New York. They're coming to Tennessee and other parts because you're all my neighbors. And you might actually be turning some of your housing value into net worth, usable net worth, because you've sold the house. But for everybody who's going on Zillow and getting themselves in a frenzy, daydreaming about how wealthy they are, remember, where do you go? Like, you could sell your house for these vaulted values, but you're probably going to pay 40% more to buy the house that you go into next. So it doesn't actually benefit you. So that's my first comment for David, is that be careful on how you're looking at your net worth. If it's all built upon use assets, that's not very viable for financial independence.
And here's a little behind the scenes that Brian and I like to do when we do our annual net worth statements and we update those. We both value the homes that we live in at the price we paid. So even though we live in Nashville, a really hot real estate market, and our houses are worth more now than we paid for them, we always value them at cost. So really, the change in net worth that happens year over year has nothing to do with appreciation and has everything to do with debt reduction through paying off the mortgage.
Now, we kind of hit David pretty hard with that. I want to give him a little bit of love in the fact that I also feel his pain in the fact that he lives in a high cost of living area.
Sure.
Look, I have been playing this arbitrage situation for decades now, and the fact that a lot of you that reach out to take the relationship to the next level, you live in the Northeast, you live on the West Coast, you live on the East Coast and New York and so forth, and you are worth seven figures, even with your investments, and yet you feel poor.
You feel broke.
I mean, we have, and this is why we have been so successful at Abound Wealth, is we attract those type of clients that come to us thinking that they have two nickels to rub together, even though they're millionaires.
Yep.
And we make them feel like VIPs, just like they actually are. But I do think that that does cause you, if you're surrounded by abundance everywhere, where everybody around you is making, in your eyes, $1 gazillion, and they're all on the path to billionaire status, and you might feel poorer than you actually are. I think a show like this can hopefully ground you, give you perspective so that you can hopefully have a healthier outlook on life.
So then the question is, all right, why do we, so if there are these hurdles, right, if there is the inflation hurdle or there's cost of living hurdle, why do we even focus on $1 million? Like, why is that something that we continue to come back to? Why is that something that a lot of the deliverables on the website are built off of?
Yeah, well, I mean, you said it in the opening. It's very motivating. I think $1 million is the first step before you go to infinity and beyond. Yep. I mean, let's face it. The quickest way to get $10 million is you got to get to $1 million first. And I can tell you, and look, we have a point on this, is because we push all the time 88 times over. What we're talking about is $1 invested by a 20-year-old has the potential by the time that person is 65 years of age, if it was invested, to be worth $88. That's right. Pretty exciting stuff. But you guys, you look at that and you go, yeah, but what can you buy with $88? Well, we're not stopping there, but we do have a point on what is $1 at 40.
Yep. So essentially, if you think about this, why is $1 million still cool? Why is $1 million still powerful? Well, think about this. If you go think about the 88 times over for a 20-year-old, for a 40-year-old, $1 we believe will grow to be about $7.34 by the time that they get to 65. Okay, well that may not get you super excited. They may not change your world. But if you think about a 40-year-old that has $1,000, well, that turns into $7,340. Or a 40-year-old that has $100,000, that turns into $734,018.
So here's the pause point. I want you guys to notice that what we're going to be talking about here is critical mass. I mean, we're training you for financial independence. When you're training for a marathon, the first day you go out, on day one, do you run 26 miles?
No, absolutely not.
Your body couldn't even handle it. Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things, and I want to just highlight $1 into $7. That's cool. That's a carnival trick.
Yep.
But then you see 1,000 to 7,300. You're like, heck, I could pay off some credit cards. That's pretty big. 100,000 to 734. You're like, whoa, wait a minute. Now we're replacing years of income. And then think about this, and this is why I still say $1 million is a lot of money, because $1 million at 40 has the potential to turn into $7.3 million. This is, even David the Troll would agree that $7.3 million is a lot of money.
And so we want this to be something that gets you excited. We actually have a deliverable out on the website. If you go to moneyguy.com/resource, you can go see what we call the wealth multiplier. We just told you for a 40-year-old, it's 7.34. Whatever you've accumulated by the time you get to 40, you can multiply that by 7.34. And without you saving another $1, that's what you would have available to you by 65. Well, maybe you want to know how much if you're a 27-year-old and you've got $8,000 saved up, what will that turn into? Or if I'm a 50-year-old and I've got $1.2 million, what will that turn into? If you've not had a chance to go look at our wealth multiplier slide, go to moneyguy.com/resources, print this out, put it on your bathroom mirror, and let this be the thing that motivates you every single day, thinking about just how powerful every dollar in your army of dollar bills is.
So, Bo, this is focusing on investing kind of every year, what a dollar can become. So you can think about it as you're putting money in there. We went a step further because we are recruiting dollars at all times, at all ages. I wanted to kind of go ahead and take it to the next stage of what David was asking us. He says, $5 million is real wealth. You guys never talk about that. You're always stuck in this $1 million status. Let's actually pivot it. Let's talk about what does it cost? What does it take to create $5 and $10 million?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is that you'll never get to $5 million unless you get to $1 million first. Like that's the thing that you have to do. And so he said, okay, well, let's talk about what does it take to get there? How much does it take to actually get to $5 million? And FTE Daniel, in true FTE Daniel fashion, put together a great illustration. And this is what he found. How much of a lump sum would you need to invest at each age in order to get to $5 million by the time that you get to 65? And for a 30-year-old, if you've accumulated about $217,000, that $217,000 by the time you get to age 65 will have turned into $5 million. So there's kind of your number if you want to have something to shoot for. Or if you want to think about a monthly savings amount, if you can save $1,700 a month starting when you're 30 all the way until you're 65, you can have it turn into $5 million. For a 35-year-old, you need almost $400,000. You need about $394,000 saved up, or you need to commit to saving a little over $3,000 a month. And then for a 40-year-old, if you want to get to $5 million by the time you get to 65, you ought to have saved up $681,000 or be committed to save $5,257 per month, starting at 40 if you're at 0, all the way until 65. It gets a lot harder the older that you get. Because what you can see is if you're a 45-year-old, what's it take to get to $5 million? Well, then you have to have $1.1 million. What I think is really encouraging is we know a lot of folks who are at that $1.1 million level in their mid-40s because they did the thing in their 20s and 30s that they were supposed to. If you're waiting and starting at 0, that becomes pretty daunting. But the bigger your army of dollars get, the more soldiers you have recruited, the more powerful it can become. And what I think is really, really remarkable is for a 50-year-old, if you can get your assets by 50 years old to a touch under $1.8 million, $1,755,000, without saving anything else, that army of dollar bills is on track to be at $5 million by the time you get to 65.
And now, no doubt, we attract financial mutants. There's a lot in our audience that you're well on track with all these numbers, but I don't want to lose focus to the motivating factor of what $1 million is. Because I still think $5 million is aspirational.
Sure.
A lot of you guys will reach either $5 million, Deca Millionaire with $10 million status. But I want to still remember there's a whole group, the Bows and the Browns, who have not arrived yet, but you're trying to figure out this whole financial education thing, and you've stumbled across the Money Guy show. $1 million is still a lot of money. That's kind of the purpose of today's show. And we've put together a lump sum. Remember, we've already covered what you need to save each month to get the status. Now let's talk about if you had a lump sum status so you can compare where you are in your savings.
And so a lot of times we'll have parents say to us or grandparents say to us, I want to set up Junior, I want to set up my granddaughter to be a millionaire by the time they retire. How much money would I need to invest if I want to do that? And so we said, yeah, it's a really novel idea. Let's create a deliverable. And so we found out if you have a brand new newborn and you want to just put a lump sum of money in an account to grow for them for the next 65 years, you would need to deposit $1,544.
That's amazing.
$1,544 can turn into $1 million. Or maybe you have that high school senior that's about to graduate. And you say, you know what, for graduation, you've made good grades, you're going to college, I want to set you up. I'm going to open up an account, and I'm going to put in $9,274 in the account for you when you graduate high school. And if you would just leave it there, I have seeded the first $1 million of your retirement portfolio. So if this is something you're curious about, go to the website, moneyguy.com/resources. Go print out this deliverable, and you can see for where I am at my age, do I at least have this much saved up? And if I do, then I'm on track for millionaire status by the time I get to retirement.
And if you're one of those folks that still thinks $1 million isn't a lot of money, multiply by 2, multiply by 3, whatever the number is that you have in your head that is actually reaching kind of wealth status. But I want to kind of go back to what David asked us when he wrote the comment on YouTube. How many millionaires are there?
Okay.
How many 5 millionaire people out there? We actually had FTE Daniel go pull the data points.
Because David said he wasn't really that impressed. He said, don't talk about millionaires. He didn't say this, but tell me if you inferred this same thing. He said, that's not that impressive. Right, if you just own a house, you're a millionaire. That's not that impressive.
Well, he all but alluded to the Robin Leach lifestyles of the rich and famous of the 80s and 90s, still talking about $1 million in 2021 in that same vein. But it is to the point that this is still a very elusive goal, and the data kind of supports that. I mean, if you notice, look, how many households in the United States have $1 million? And you can see it's 12% of the population. A little over 15 million households have $1 million.
And so if you can just kind of stop there, if you're someone who you've done the hard work, you've saved, you've built wealth, and you've crossed over that 7-figure mark, you are already there in pretty elite company. That's a unique. So for David to say, oh, $1 million isn't that special, I'm going to argue it is pretty special. It'll put you in the top 12% of this country just by crossing into that one threshold.
There's something I can't help but notice from a numbers standpoint. Just like we know, I remember when we did our Back to the Future episode and we recognized the DeLorean had to reach 88 miles per hour before it actually could time travel.
Right, yep.
Notice the backside of this. 88% never reach millionaire status. So, I mean, once again, I'm telling you, these numbers swim all around us, guys. Use this to your benefit. And then Bo's already said, look, a lot of you're thinking you live in a coastal city, $1 million, not much. How about $2 million? You can see it drops the number down to 6% or a little over 8 million households. And then we even went a step further with $5 million is 3% of the population or a little over 3.5 million. And then look at this. If you want to know where the 1% is, there's a little under 1.5 million households that have Deca millionaire status.
So David, if you're out there listening and you're still a fan, which I hope that you are, and you said, well, talk to me about the 5 million, talk about the 10 million, about 3% of American households make it to that level. About 1% make it to the 10 million level. But again, we've said this over and over and over. Before you can get to the 1% and before you can get to the 3%, you got to get to the 12%. You got to get to that first million first. And $1 million is still a lot of money. There's still a lot that $1 million can do for you.
I feel like this show has been an EKG in the fact that we talk about how valuable $1 million is, but then we scratch the itch of those that are aspiring to go even higher to 5 million, 10 million. I want to bring it back down to the low side of the EKG, and you just set it up, is that $1 million still does a lot for you, and we've actually mathematically figured this out, is that, first of all, we know one of the biggest things you're doing with your money. Why are you saving? Why are you investing? Is that you're hoping that it's going to give you that great, big, beautiful tomorrow, and the fact that your money will work just as hard, if not even harder, than you do with your brains, your back, and your hands. Safe withdrawal rates are something we hear in retirement planning all the time. And you hear about from the Trinity study, somewhere around 4% is what people think about. The real answer is, because they've updated, is somewhere between 4 to 5% if you do normal retirement. How does that play into $1 million, Bo?
Yeah, so if you think about what $1 million can do from you, and you were going to retire today, and someone might come to us and say, hey, I'm thinking about retiring, and I've saved up this money. What does that mean for me? Well, using very simple math, not actually running through a full retirement plan, because that's what we'd always want to do before we ever signed off that someone could retire, we'd run through an estimate showing that, you know what? $1 million can generate for you about $45,000 in perpetual income. It's kind of this idea of living off the interest. It's about a 4.5% withdrawal rate. And if you can live off of $45,000 a year, there's a chance that you'll start retirement with $1 million. You'll pull off $45,000 a year in today's dollars. And then when you leave this earth, you'll leave behind at least $1 million in today's dollars. Again, it's this whole live off of the interest idea. But for most households, at least in this country, that's not all. That's not all that means, because if you think about someone who has worked for their whole career and they've paid into the system, there's another benefit that most folks get when they reach a certain age, and that's Social Security. So if you look at the average Social Security benefit, and again, this is from Daniel, help me with the FRED acronym again. It's the
Federal Reserve
economic database.
There you
Is that
go.
right?
That
Is
sounds about
yeah,
right.
I think it's the E always gets
Or
me.
it's that guy we bumped into down at the coffee
Yeah,
shop.
we got FTE Daniel, and then we got Fred. And so if you look at the average Social Security benefit that most Americans receive, it's about $18,500. Well, if you take $45,000 annual income plus a Social Security benefit, that comes out to $63,500.
That's pretty close. I mean, because we took it a step further. We said, what does the typical American, what do they need in retirement? And by the way, all of you guys, you're data junkies. We didn't take average. We did median. The median income in the United States is about $68,700.
So with $1 million, you basically are able to reproduce or to replicate about the median household income in this country. That's not too shabby. And again, withdrawal rates, it's not always a static 4.5%. You know, if you're someone who's going to retire early, we were talking about a little bit in show prep about this, you may want a lower withdrawal rate. You might not want to be as high as 4 and 4.5. If you're someone who's going to retire later, perhaps you can have a higher withdrawal rate. But this at least gives you an idea. $1 million still goes a long way, and it can still do a lot for the average American household.
Yeah, and so let's talk about what does wealth actually look like for you, because we've covered a broad spectrum today. We've talked about the basic $1 million and what that can do for you, but then we've gotten very aspirational, going to 5 million, 10 million. What does actual wealth look like for you? And guys, I got to tell you, it's very personalized. I mean, we have clients that, especially when I first started, y'all know when I started my first business in 2002, if you had $50,000 to $75,000, I would have come and painted your walls in your house to get you to hire me, because that's how, I mean, so a lot of those clients are still clients of mine, but now their $100,000, $200,000 has turned into $600,000, $700,000. I had a call with a client that's been with me since 2002, just yesterday. I mean, and it's just incredible to see what this has happened for him, and the fact that still $500,000 to even under $1 million is plenty.
Absolutely.
When you add in Social Security, pensions, and other things that some people who've been in the workforce for a number of years have opportunities to. But then there's others of you who are very aspirational. You're very successful at a young age. You might need $5 million. Yep. So I want you to know this is very personalized. That's why we always talk about the abundance cycle and taking the relationship to the next level. Is you have to figure out what your level of wealth is. And that's why we've done several shows on the 5 levels of wealth.
Yeah, it's so funny, Brian. I get this question often. You know, people will find out that I'm a financial advisor and it's what I do for a day job, and maybe they've never heard of the show. And they'll say, hey, you know, I'm thinking about how much I need to retire. And I'm like, oh, man, what a nebulous question to try to answer, because there's so many different variables that go into that. What kind of retirement are you looking for? What are the goals that you hope to achieve? And what I find so remarkable, even across our client base, is you already mentioned we have clients who maybe only have $500,000, $600,000, $7,000 portfolio, but they are indeed financially independent. They're able to do all the things that they want. They're able to live the life that they want to live at that level. And then we have other clients who might have 7, even 8-figure portfolios, and they're just not quite there yet because of the things they want to accomplish, the things they want to do. Understanding where you are and what you're working towards is the only real way to answer the question, what's my number? How do I know what my number actually is?
And Bo, from even, because that's analytics, that's giving you, what's your number is just mathematically figuring it out. But there's also an entirely different part that does not involve math whatsoever. Right. And that's kind of what we were trying to get to when we started doing the episodes. This is kind of an annual tradition now that we cover the 5 levels of wealth. And I feel like last year, if you go check out the show we did just in, I believe it was 2020, this new updated version came out. We kind of nailed it, especially when we got to stages 4 and 5 of wealth. Right. But Bo, just to kind of review, walk them through what the 5 stages of wealth are.
Yeah, so in the first stage of wealth, we're really talking about stability. This is the part of life where you have the basics covered. You're no longer wondering, am I going to be able to keep the lights on? Am I going to be able to keep food on the table? You know, this is as you've worked through the early steps of the financial order of operations, you feel like you're on sound financial footing. It's no more a question of, am I going to be able to like make ends meet? you are actually in that stage of life where the ends are meeting.
I think it's interesting, and this is a point we've made on several shows. You make it to stage 1 of the 5 levels of wealth just by having pretty much your debt under control and $1,000 in bank, because we know 60% of Americans can't even come up with $1,000 if they really got squeezed on it. So it's a pretty low barrier to get into the first stage of stability.
Yep. And so then we talk about the second level of wealth. That's actually strategy. That's where you recognize that not only are the ends meeting in your financial life, but there's a little bit of excess. There is some thought around, okay, maybe I should deploy my army of dollar bills in a certain way to achieve a certain outcome, whether that be financial abundance, retirement, short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. You have some strategy around your finances. You're recognizing, if I can give up just a little bit of today for that big, beautiful tomorrow, I can put some steps in place to allow me to walk in that direction.
Yeah, the army of dollars, guys, when you realize that your money's going to work harder than you can, it really opens up lots of opportunities for the future.
And that actually takes you to the third level of wealth, which is security. Now you recognize, okay, not only are the ends meeting, not only am I on sound financial footing, and not only do I have a plan in place, but my plan's actually starting to work. I can see some of the fruits of my labor, and we just kind of said, that's not sweating the small stuff. That's recognizing that, hey, maybe it's okay if I do go on that trip, or hey, maybe it's okay if I do have that luxury, because I know that my strategy that's in place is going to allow me to achieve the financial goals that I ultimately want to achieve.
And that leads to step 4. And this is what I think most people are aspiring to reach is financial independence. And this is the part, it goes down as simple as this. This is, you get to do what you want, when you want, and how you want. That's what you're daydreaming to do. When, if you're working that job where you're like, oh my goodness,
Sunday
I have to
morning,
put those socks on, you're chewing your fingernails on Sunday. You keep thinking, I think I can, because I want to do what I want, when I want, how I want. You're probably practically singing that to yourself over and over again. But guys, I got to tell you, that is, congratulations when you reach that stage, but there is still a step above this. At the top of the pyramid, this is the part where you really have put a lot of time into knowing your why. But Bo, walk them through what abundance is.
Yeah, this is the level of wealth to which only a few people actually get there, right? But what we recognize is that it's not a number when someone gets to financial abundance, because abundance is really about knowing who you are, what you value, and what brings you purpose. You have now gone past stability and strategy and security and even like the freedom to do what I want, when I want, how I want. It's, no, this is how I want to deploy both my time and my resources to do whatever that thing is I was put on this earth to do. And what I think is amazing is it happens for different folks at different stages. It's not a number thing. No. A lot of folks, they get to millionaire status and that's when it happens. Some folks get there, they don't ever actually reach abundance. They don't ever actually get there. They just stay in that, okay, well, I have some freedom, but I'm not actually living an abundant life, a life that's full of more than just the goal of hitting that dollar figure.
Well, I think we could fill this entire studio with research articles, blog posts, books about money and happiness. But there's so much misunderstanding about the relationship of money and happiness. When people talk about happiness, that's different than fulfillment.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm trying to always give you guys the breadcrumbs to go beyond happiness, because that's the part where you're going to work in the morning to start building your army of dollar bills so you can do things on your own terms.
That's right.
That is, happiness though is just covering the basics. That is understanding that. But I'm telling you guys, fulfillment is what I think most of us, that's the life well lived that I think we all aspire to. What the difference between happiness and fulfillment is that when you wake up in the morning, it's not that you're going to work to create resources to fill the bank account. It's that you wake up in the morning and you feel like you have purpose, that in your own little way, you're making the world a better place because of what you're doing. And if you can line up all things in your life, that is the part that, I mean, it gives me tingles just thinking about what you can accomplish if you have that understanding of going beyond happiness and trying to find the why and find the fulfillment, you'll figure out money is so much bigger
That's right.
than paying bills, so much bigger than retirement. Money is a tool for building abundance, not just in your life, but even in much bigger ways in the world.
I think that's so well said. Money is a tool that allows you to focus on and spend your time, energy, and effort where you want to spend it. What's so beautiful about the 5 levels of building wealth is that it's really hard to have security in your financial circumstance unless you have a strategy in place. It's really hard to feel good about the strategy you have unless you have some stability. You know that you've covered the basics, you know that you've covered your risks, and then you can actually excel to the financial freedom part until you've hit that security part from the strategy. And they all build upon themselves beautifully so that you recognize money is not the goal. It's not the thing that I'm trying to attain. It's not the achievement that I want to reach. But what not having to worry about money does for you is allows you to figure out what that thing is and spend all of your time, effort, and attention working on that thing.
So let's bring it back to the $1 million, which is the purpose of this show, how we started it, how do you get to $1 million, and how do you go to infinity and beyond with it, is that I always look at $1 million, and people get excited because I think when you're in your 20s, when you think of $1 million, you're thinking of the Ferrari. You're thinking of all the things you could consume and buy with that money. The reality, guys, is as you build your understanding of money and financial independence and how it works, is that money actually is, and wealth in general, wealth specifically, is silent. You know, there's a reason so many of these concepts, millionaire next door. Why is that concept so popular? Is because we find out once you actually understand what makes money tick, is that you might very well be living next to somebody who is checking both levels 4 and 5 on the stages of wealth, and you had no idea.
Yeah, I wonder if the book would have sold as well if it was the millionaire that lives on top of the mountain that overlooks the whole city that you've never actually gotten to see in real life.
Yeah.
Like, it makes it so much less personable, so much less attainable. What we love about millionaire status is that it is, in fact, actually attainable for everyone. If you can just start early, stay consistent, and work through the paces, I think that's a beautiful story to tell.
Yeah, just don't fall into the traps. I mean, from our experience of working with successful families, wealthy people don't have credit card debt.
Nope.
So despite what the world and all the commercial breaks are telling you, consumption is not what actually creates happiness. So if you're struggling with credit card debt and some of those basics, figure out what you can do to turn your wages into investment capital. That really is the secret. How do you create a machine? Because that's where you're the CEO of a 7-figure operation, is as quickly as possible turn your working capital into investment capital so that the money's even working while you're sleeping.
So one of the questions that you may be asking is, all right, so are you guys saying that everyone needs to be a millionaire? You know, that's something we all need to shoot for. Not necessarily, but I'll be honest, it's not a bad goal. If you're someone in your 20s and 30s and you're just starting out, it may be hard to get your mind wrapped around, oh, I want to be a millionaire. But you know what you can get your mind wrapped around? I can save 20 to 25% of my gross income.
Yeah.
I can start taking the steps early on. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that money away and I'm going to let it work for me while I sleep. And one day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be at millionaire status. And if you're someone that's in your mid-30s into your 40s, and you say, okay, well, I've done a good job of accumulating and I'm not quite at millionaire status yet, but man, I'd like to be there. Figure out what it would take. Maybe you're that person that you've been saving 10% of your gross income, but now, you know what, I need to pick it up. I need to do 12%, 15%. I need to grow that. And then maybe for that person in your mid-40s to your mid-50s, and you say, okay, I've achieved a millionaire status. What's next? Maybe then you need to start thinking about, okay, well, what's the goal? What do I ultimately want to do with the remaining years in my life, both working and then post-work? And then what steps do I need to be taking now to get there? Maybe that number is to turn into one of David's 5 million or 10 millionaires. Maybe it's not. Maybe at 57 and you've got $1.4 million saved up and you've got a pension and Social Security payout and you have no debt, you may be at that place where, I don't have to go to work anymore. I don't have to continue to grind the way that I have. If you're not asking yourself those questions, you're doing yourself a disservice. But I still think $1 million is a great goal.
Well, this is what I love about what we do. We talk about the abundance cycle all the time and the fact that, guys, we just give it away. I mean, we are telling you all the information. I don't care where you come from. I don't care if you come from money. I don't care if what your education status is. Money doesn't care about any of that stuff. It just needs you to respect and get on the path to creating financial independence. So that's why we help you learn. We help you apply. We help you grow your assets. And then we do. This is why I call it the abundance cycle, because it is full circle in the fact that when you reach a level of success that you start questioning, am I doing this right? What do I not know? Or how do I keep this going from a legacy standpoint? You'll remember who invested in you for years, because we've been doing this since 2006. Who invested in you, and you'll want to take the relationship to the next level. And this is a great time if you're just now discovering the Money Guy Show, is that we have actually, even though we've been doing this since 2006, we came out in 2020. We brought a lot of our ideas and said, what do you do with your next dollar? Is there a step-by-step guide with what to do with your army of dollar bills? And it started as a show in 2016 called The Financial Order of Operations. It's now a free download that you can go to moneyguide.com/resources, where we go through the 9 steps of what to do with your next dollar. But it's even better than that, because last year in 2020, we upped it to a course.
That's right.
And we've just, as Bo said when we started the show, we just did Financial Order of Operations course 2.0. We doubled the amount of curriculum, and we've created a pretty unique opportunity. I'd invite you right now through the rest of the day. We have special pricing and other things. Go check it out. This is an opportunity to kind of really turbocharge, put rocket fuel in your financial journey.
And if you haven't had a chance to go check out even some of the other deliverables, we talked about a few of them on today's show. Go to moneyguide.com/resources. We constantly and continually update those. So if you want to talk about how valuable and how strong your army of dollars can be, how to make your grandchild a millionaire, whether you should refinance your house, how to go figure out how to do your taxes. If you have questions around any of those topics, there's a chance we have a deliverable for you. So go to moneyguy.com/resources and make sure you check out the deliverable page.
Guys, thank you so much. I'm your host, Brian Preston. Mr. Bo Hansen, Money Guy team, out.